Any,
All right, I would like to call the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Let us start with a Pledge of Allegiance and the Goethe Pledge. Please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Casey.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens, neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Thank you. Roll call. Frank?
I am here.
Sam?
Here.
And we know at the moment Pete is not here and Katrin is not, but we have quorum.
Pete, actually, Casey, would you be able to send Pete a link? He was having trouble getting connected today.
Sure, which email
It's all
address?
on our website. If he contacted you, you can say it's on our website on the main page.
But it's very easy to send it to him. If you could send it to his Goethe address.
And his follows the same format as all the rest of the addresses?
Yes, I'll try.
I just did it, so he's
Thank
got
you.
it. Okay. All right, I'd like to make a motion for the affirmation of board findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. Is there a second?
I
A
second.
second.
All right, all in favor, Frank?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
All right, and that is an aye for me. We are moving on to the approval of the agenda as presented. I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
That's from Sam. All in favor, Frank?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
That's a yes for me as well. Any public comment, Casey?
The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda. And there is no public comment.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to approve the special board meeting minutes of January 31st. All in favor, Frank?
Aye.
Sam?
Yes.
That is a yes for me. Moving on to the ED report. Chris, I did.
Has Pete been able to join us?
I emailed it to Pete. I don't think he has.
Okay, I'm gonna. Give me just a second. Okay. All right, if I could share the ED report. All right, just to start us off, as we are aware, the pandemic is ongoing. We've been responding in real time to activities and changes that are, literally changing by the day. We have definitely seen a decrease in positivity in the test results. We are below 2%, and this past week we actually dropped below 1%. Which is, in terms of positivity rate, is a really good thing. We are we have not had any new positive tests for staff. Last week, we only had one new positive test for students that happened during testing, and one that happened in the weekend. We have not had any over this most recent weekend, and we are doing our testing tomorrow, so we will see where we stand. Currently, there is no shift yet in LA County Department of Health or LAUSD guidance for schools. The state is making some shifts, including ones that could relate to masking, in which they say, I believe February 28th, so the end of the month, they're going to be re-looking at that issue of, statewide, they're actually talking about indoor masking. But in terms of, they've already rescinded outdoor masking from the state level, but that has not been rescinded at the county level nor at the LAUSD level. So we're just continuing to follow the guidelines as they come in, and we are just adjusting as we go, but things are definitely getting better from an overall perspective. Things are settling down in terms of testing and positivity. So that's real good news. Any questions about the pandemic or things that are happening there? And hearing none, I'm going to keep on moving then. Enrollment update. We had our budget that was based on 424 students, as we know. We had 377 students that we reported last month. We are currently at 382 as of today, so that is good news. We finally are turning in the positive direction. One of the issues that we're facing is that ADA, average daily attendance, dropped in January. That was due to the Omicron surge. We are returning to normal levels with our ADA currently, where normal, a typical day, we might have anywhere between 10 and 20, 25 students absent. And so we're reaching those levels now, but during January, we were hitting 60, 65 students, even more at times, that were out. Now, we will be catching up on that with independent study contracts, but that does not showing in this month's the end of January financials. So the financials that we look at today do not include the catch up that will happen with independent studies. So it shows a little bit lower than where it will end up. Just want to make sure people are aware of that. And you can see, again, the enrollment patterns are spread across. We're not losing in any one particular grade. It's kind of across all the areas where we have some class sizes that are low. And so we're taking all that into account as we head into lottery season. An important update for Prop 39 and where we stand currently. We did receive our February 1 preliminary offer, and it was essentially the same offer as we get in 2020 that we got in 2021, 2022. That is a they don't get into the detail of which exact rooms are put forth in the preliminary offer, but in terms of the raw numbers, it is the same as we were offered. And as you recall, we did ask for an alternative agreement last year, and that unfortunately didn't get signed or agreed to all the way until August. We are going to be pushing very hard to have that same alt agreement with the same rules and agreements that would we hope to be able to get that finalized prior to lottery. So that would be by the end of March, so that we know before going into lottery where we stand. So that's what we'll be working on. We also want to be looking towards long term. I know we've talked to Stifel, who's come out and spoken to the board with regard to financing and long term, and they basically had said we're not in a spot yet where we can do that. But in order to make that happen, we would need some kind of a bridge loan that gets us to the point of being able to purchase or potentially lease to own. And so there are another group of charter school folks that I would like to pursue, and that is a group called Red Hook. We did have a conversation with them about 3 years ago. And apparently that was when I was here. And then apparently even prior to that, they had discussions with the previous executive director, as well as I think the board president at that time. So I'd like to pursue that and wanted to make the board aware. And if there's any board members, I know, for instance, Yasir has had particular interest in this over the years, but if there's anyone who would like to be a part of any of those conversations, to please contact me, and I'm going to set that up with Red Hook. Any questions about Prop 39 and facilities?
Just a comment, whether it's a sale or leaseback, the same mechanics may, financially apply, whether you call it a purchase, a sale or leaseback, it's all the same stuff. It's just, component interest rate calculations back and forth. But in general, it's the same stuff.
It's a more expensive option because you're paying for that bridge loan as part of it, and you're trying to get out of that as quickly as possible.
Right. Just to further, but you have the opportunity to scale, right? That's the, that's the only thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's kind of our only entry into actually
Yep.
purchasing at this point.
It's the bet, you outsource, you basically transfer the risk of scale to these guys, right? And they take it on for a premium or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and a marketing update, and it's too bad that Katrin is not here, because I did want, she'd asked about this particularly and wanted to get an update. So I'll make sure I connect with her separately as well. But I do want you guys to be aware that we've been working with our own internal marketing team. Nazmia, as our social media coordinator, has been a part of that. Biggie as well, myself, and then Thorsten Rode, who is a past parent, but with specific expertise in marketing and a lot of knowledge about our school, and had worked previously in helping out in marketing with the school. And so he's been volunteering and joining us from Germany, which is where he lives currently. So we've been the group, we've gotten together several times. Our goal is to create a format for an annual marketing plan with key calendar dates and creating an ongoing structure for marketing strategies. That's where we want to get to. We do not, we're doing a lot of things, but we don't have it all into a format, something that can be kind of plug and play each year. And so that's our goal. We have applied to Taproot, which is a private 501c3 group that supports other nonprofits. And we've already had one conversation with them where we've applied to a March 25th event that's a 2-hour online event to get specific feedback on this plan and the format. But I do want to give the board an idea of what we are doing currently, because even though we don't have this finalized plan, so to speak, we are doing more in marketing than we've ever done previously, and we're spending more on it as well. So I want to give you an idea of the things that we're doing. Online Facebook ads and Google ads. I put Nazmi in parentheses on Facebook ads because she's really guiding that, and not just the purchase of them, but also making sure that they are directed towards groups that we are interested in seeing. So Facebook groups that we want to see our name out with, and she's been doing a great job of that. Google ads, we've coordinated that through Westchester and Venice Living, so it's part of our ongoing, and we have a 3-year commitment with them. And so part of it is for traditional and part of it is for online. And so we're doing Google ads through them. We also do our weekly social media posts with Instagram being the main hub, but it pushes out to Twitter and Facebook as well. We have our niche partnership for online, and we also have our website, and niche helps us with update or tracking of usage with that, also through Google Analytics. In the traditional side, because we don't want to forget that as well, we have been putting ads into Argonaut special issues. We certainly did it for Best of the West Side. We also do it for their education issues. The Westchester Hometown News, Playa Vista Direct, Westchester Living, Venice Living, LAX Coastal Business Directory. Those are traditional venues in which we get our name and our advertisements into. And then finally, face-to-face, which of course is certainly been affected by the pandemic over the past 2 years. But we have continued our virtual Zoom tours, which happen every Thursday. And I want to give a little shout out to Casey, who really is the face of those tours. And she spends time, it's supposed to be an hour, but it always ends up more, each Thursday morning with groups. And so she's doing that in preparation for the lottery. We have done a few local enrollment fairs, but most of those were canceled in the fall and in the early spring due to pandemic. So there are definitely challenges with marketing, but I do want the board to know that we're investing heavily in both sides of both the online, which is kind of our newest foray, and then also traditional and face-to-face as we're able to do it.
Is it true that our niche rating came up a little bit? I texted you and I said, well, encouraging, right? Because it.
Yes, we're at an A rating on niche, and that is good. The rankings shift every year. So we had an A rating the year before also. So we bumped, previously we'd had a B rating, and so it did move up from B to A, but that was 2 years ago. But what I think on what you had sent, it showed the rankings of various schools, and that shifts every year. They recalibrate in September, I think.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I felt pretty good about that. It was
7 or 8, 7th or 8th in LA Charter School. I think it was a very positive outcome. It was in the top 10 or something like that.
Yeah, they have a variety of different categories.
Yeah.
But yeah, we looked like we're definitely in the top 20% of anything that was being looked at. So that was good.
Chris, I think the other thing that I don't think we've done is, I know there's some organizations that go out and actually recruit students for your school. And I know at my other school, they've been very successful. So that might be something that we want to consider as well.
Could you send me any leads on who has been effective? I'd
Yep.
love to run that down.
I'm waiting for my text to be responded to because I wanted to make that comment with the name, but
So great. Yeah, just get
yeah,
that to me.
they've been I think they picked up like 20 of the students that enrolled this year came from this company,
Wow.
which is you know, and the
That
cost
would have
was
made a
way
big
less.
difference
Yeah,
for us this year.
exactly. So yeah, as soon as I get it, I will pass it on.
Thank you. Okay. And let me go ahead and push this forward. We wanted to give the board an update on how things are going at mid-year with our interventions.
Can we come back to the Taproot thing? So
Oh, sorry.
this is interesting because I'm here on the website as well. I'm just looking at it, right?
Mhm.
On my phone. That's why my eyes always go down here. Teachers know that something is not right when the eyes are not in the camera. But so they would just, you know, they could help with branding and stuff like that. Is that what we're trying to do? Because like the first thing came up, or are we in an exploratory stage? You know,
It was actually a group that Katrin recommended.
mhm.
And so we checked them out, and basically you can ask for support if you are a nonprofit organization, as we are, and you can ask for support in a number of different areas, one of them being marketing, and they will provide that. They'll also provide support in HR. They'll provide support in different things, and you kind of go to them with a problem. And so we did an initial thing and kind of talked through with one of the people, and basically these are people who are doing it pro bono. So they're volunteering their time and supporting a variety of nonprofits in this way. And so I had never heard of it, but Katrin said she'd had experience in working with it and thought it might be a good match, and it certainly seems promising to just giving us a little bit of maybe a professional edge to our marketing. And so that's where we're trying to take to them, okay, how do we develop our annual plan and really get that that we're thinking through all the different pieces to it, and that each year we can come back to it and say, okay, this, and we'll tighten this up and let's go this direction, but not that direction.
Well, maybe they have a branding specialist, right, who just like can say, okay, like build up a brand, and so like you get a media plan. So that's an interesting development. I like it a lot. So just my comment, my question. Apologize. Please go ahead with your.
And I didn't mean to jump ahead. Any other questions on marketing? Okay, now I will jump ahead. All right. So as you guys are aware, at any time, intervention is an important piece of the puzzle for our students to succeed. And during pandemic, it has been extremely important. And we invested in a number of different things, a lot of it using one-time funds, pandemic funding, in order to support students. And so we've done it in a couple of different ways. And we've had online support for daily after school. That's small group classes. They've really focused on math, and had that got going right away. So that's been something that's been available for quite some time. We've had a teacher on campus support with a pullout program that we did with 2 different teachers in the fall, and one of those teachers is now picking up the whole program, and that is basically our neediest students that are struggling, and we wanted to make a focus on primary grades, and so that's where the on-campus support and pull out of classrooms is happening in grades K1 and 2. And then we also paid for a dedicated intervention instructional aide who does both pull out and push in support during the school day. So that's again face-to-face with students. And we've been tracking these results through iReady, which we did a big, beginning of the year assessment, and then we did a mid-year assessment in December. So the results that we're going to look at are from December, and give us an idea of where things stand currently. And this is not definitive because we're only partway through the year, but it does give us a sense of what's happening. So I'm going to turn it over to Casey and let her talk through the iReady growth reports so far this year.
Thanks, Dr. Jones. So what we've done with the iReady data is this is the progress towards students' annual typical growth. So it's looking at where they were when they tested at the beginning of the year in August and how much growth they've had when they tested again in December. In August, remember, iReady automatically assigns a student a goal for that year based on their performance for the first test. And so then throughout the year, we're able to look at their progress towards reaching that goal as they complete the following tests. So the growth that you see here is basically from the beginning of the year till the midway point. The way we have the data on these graphs is this first one will show all of our students who are receiving any of the intervention services for math. So this includes students who are being pulled out with that small group on campus during the school day, students who attend the after school tutoring via Zoom, and also students who receive support from the intervention instructional assistant throughout the day. The small group for during the school day and also for tutoring are our most neediest students. And then the IA support kind of is then the next level up. So there are students who have all three of these supports in place. There are students who have one or two of them. So this shows all students who are getting any of those supports. So basically what we see is we have a group of students who have made anywhere from between no progress since the beginning of the year to about 25%. So for all of our students receiving intervention services, that's 42 in math, 42 of the 158 that are receiving services. 25 of those students are between 26 and 50% towards meeting their goal. And then the other 91 are either on track to meet their goal from the end of the year, they're in that 51 to 75%, or they're very close to meeting or have already met in the 76 to 100%, or they have met and surpassed the goal. That's that 101 plus percentage point. So you can see the majority of our students receiving math intervention services are on track or exceeding in terms of progress towards their annual typical growth in math. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
And then we wanted to kind of break it down and take a look at the intervention by service.
Sorry about that.
So again, there are some students who will be in a couple of these different categories because they receive small group and they go to the after school and they also receive support from the IA during the day, or they do small group and get the IA support, or they do small group and get Zoom. So this is kind of a combination of anyone who receives that small group on campus support during the school day. There are about 33 of those, there are 33 students who are receiving small group. This is only kinder, first and second grade. So you can see here, we see a bigger difference. So whereas when we're looking at all students, it's pretty balanced where the ones who have met or exceeded their goal versus the ones who have not made much progress. But here you see we have just over half of our students have not made adequate progress to show that they're looking like they're on track to meet the goal, whereas just under half are either on progress or have already met their goal.
These are the identified students who are struggling the most, which is why they're selected for this program. So
Yeah.
they're okay.
And you could go on to, yeah. So for our students who go to the after school Zoom tutoring that was has been offered over the first semester. This is open to students in all grades. So Ms. Bavelis works with kids from kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade. Each grade has their own dedicated Zoom time so that they're not mixed across grade levels working on different standards. And so there are 68 students who receive this tutoring support online after school. So here, this trend, we start to see it looks more like what we saw when we're looking at all of our students, where it's still pretty close to the halfway point. We have 30 students who have not quite met their midway point goal, around 50%. And we have a significant number, 19, that are in that 0 to 25% progress. But then the majority, so 38 of the 68 students, are either on track to meet their goal or have already met it. I will say, just as a side note, that 101 plus, we have significant numbers of kids who are at 200%. In ELA, we have kids who are at 300%. So once they go past that goal, they don't just stop, they continue to move on and work on further information and data. And then for our IA support, this is our largest group that receives support during the school day. So this is the intervention IA who pushes into the classroom. He will do one-on-one help with students as they need it. He'll work with students on the activities that they're doing inside the classroom. And then we'll also sometimes pull a small group to provide more intervention as well. But because he's pushing into the class, it's obviously the largest number of kids that receive this type of support. So here we have 125 students. And again, these students are not our highest need of support. They're kind of that next tier up. So the ones who are just about one grade level below expectations. And so here you see even more of our students who are on track to meet their goals by the end of the year or have already met them. So we have 54 who are not on track yet for the type of progress that we would expect to see, and then 71 who are on track or surpassed. And we see similar trends in ELA. For ELA, we only have right now the small group on-campus support for our K-1-2 students, and then the intervention IA support. The after-school support has really focused on math during this first semester. So that's why you don't see any after-school Zoom tutoring represented here. So again, similar trends where we have a group who is really below expectations in terms of their progress towards their annual typical growth goal. And then we have a group who are far surpassing their goal. They're at that 101 plus. And then kind of that dip in the middle of smaller numbers who are close to meeting it, on track, or slightly above. And then looking at the small group, so again, these are students with the highest needs academically. And we see, just like we did in math, that there's a significantly higher number of students who are not on track for that progress as the ones who are, but we're still seeing progress for them as they go throughout this first semester. And then this is just a look at the students who receive that intervention support from the instructional assistant during the school day. So again, pretty similar as what we saw with the small group, that we have 31 right now who did 0 to 25% progress, but then there are 38 who are in that 101 plus.
Casey, how many more slides do you have?
That's it.
Okay, I have a few questions. So I'll start the ball rolling if that's all right with everyone. So thank you. This is a very, it's a new report, which I think is great. But my impression of it is basically half the kids are struggling and the other half are fine. Is that the impression? right?
Yeah, so we have a group of kids who are not making
Regardless of
type of
service.
progress. Exactly.
So just, to get to the end or the conclusion, what's the difference?
Well, to look at that, we need to look at the individual student. So we have within these groups with the highest needs, attendance becomes an issue. So are students regularly attending class? And if they are they there on time, in time for their morning intervention support? Or are they missing that intervention? I know also with the Zoom intervention, some students have very strong attendance and some come once every couple of weeks, or they pop out during the middle of their classes. So attendance is a big factor to look at as well. And then also when we're looking at the progress towards their goal, we have to also keep in mind that they don't all have the same goal. So there might be kids who are in that 101 plus that are 2 years, 3 years below, and kids who are in that 0 to 25 who might be closer to being on grade level, but just aren't moving as quickly towards their goal. So there's a lot of different factors to look at, but like when we're looking at these 31 kids, just for example here, that receive the IA support, it really becomes digging into each individual student and what their situation is.
So I think this is really important because, and I'll hand this off to the rest of the board members, but I think this needs to be scrutinized further. And we need some conclusions so that like some concrete, and you're absolutely right. If attendance is a thing, then I think you take that group, that 50%, and you say of that 50%, attendance is a major factor. Or of that 50%, they're 3 years behind, and or of the 50% doing 101% or more, or 70, on the green side, that they're 2 years behind. But if I can be honest, this doesn't look very good. This looks awful that there's something wrong. And we need to get down to a conclusion and find out like what's wrong. And if it's attendance, I can understand that, but I mean, this personally scares me. But anyway, so that's my thought, that this is revisited as quickly as possible and drill down to determine what the root cause is for the red side of the graph. All right, thank you, Frank.
I let Pete run with that for a moment. What is it? I relinquish my time.
You relinquish your time to Pete,
Yep,
of course.
yep.
All right, Sam.
I'd like to hear Pete on this first too. Thanks.
Go ahead, Pete. Floor is yours.
All right. So I think so I agree and disagree with you, Yasir. I think you have to remember that the data that you're looking at here is only from about half the students in the school, right? So this isn't a picture of growth for everyone. This is just a picture of growth for those students who were the lowest performing based on, unless, correct me if I'm wrong here, based on the initial iReady assessment that took place last year, right? So the assumption here is missing any intervention, all of these students would have been on the left side in the red and the yellow, but because there was an intervention, presumably some of these students now have picked up and are starting to progress more than they would have had there not been these interventions. So we're not looking at all the kids, we're just looking at a subset of the kids. So it's really not, so there's nothing that scares me about that. I think that's fine. You just have to bear in mind that we're working with a subset of all the students at Goethe. But it's not all puppy dogs and chocolate candies, because it's Valentine's Day. Still, there is some grains of salt to be taken with these results, and I think so the things that were pointed out, I think, are important. And I think one is it would be good to see a chart of the progress by growth expectation. So while it is certainly a reasonable assumption to assume that or potentially a reasonable assumption to assume that 31 kids in the red are the ones that have 3 years of progress to make up, versus the ones on the right side or on the other side of the chart there who are in the green. It very well could be. We don't know if there's a relationship between how much growth is expected and whether or not they're meeting that growth. So that would be a huge thing to know, partly because it helps you plan, right? So if you know that, do we want to focus on, or do you want to focus on the kids that are furthest behind first to catch them up? Or do you want to focus on the kids that are just a little bit behind, but if we can tick them over the, get them over that line now, then they don't need additional services. So we kind of reduce the group of kids that need services. But in order to know that, you have to kind of see the relationship between who needs services, or what kind of growth is expected, and what kind of progress is happening based on your interventions here. So I think just some useful information. And the same as said, the other thing in terms of attendance, that's very much the case in education. There's lots of great interventions, but kids they're supposed to attend don't often attend, which again, this means that if we know who that is, what group that is, that something needs to be done to get them to attend. So I think those are two, I think you hit the nail on the head. Those are two key things. The one caveat I would have, though, is that whenever we're looking at data that's focused on the bottom quartile or so, or bottom third of the distribution, is there's going to be some regression to the mean, which means that low performing kids tend to do better the second time around. That's just a mathematical fact that happens. And so we don't know that some of these green kids are doing better just because they couldn't do as poorly the first time as they did. And, they took it a little bit more seriously. They attended school. To attribute it to the intervention is difficult to ascribe causation to that. So while I agree that the picture isn't as negative as Yasir seems to imply, it also isn't quite as rosy as it might seem by having a lot of kids in the green bar. So I would agree that some additional teasing out of what those growth expectations are, how close these kids are coming to meeting those, whether some of these kids that are in their 100% range, I assume, now no longer need services, so you can focus more attention on the subgroup that does need attention. And so I think there's a little bit of a planning and response to these data that should take place. That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. So just strictly crunching numbers, of the approximately 160 kids who are in intervention, half of them are, below the 50% mark. So you're looking at about 70 kids. So to me, that's, whether that's 70 or 700, I think it's important I think my point is not basically the number set, but or the subset of data. I mean, that's 20% of the entire population of the school who are in intervention, and the information you're presenting is saying that they're struggling. So they're coming not from an education background, coming from a professional background. When you present information like that, I would like to see conclusions that say, or some sort of plan that says, this is what's happened. This is why we believe it's happening. And this is what we're going to do to mitigate it or improve upon it. Presenting data just for the sake of presenting data, to me, is not sufficient at this level. So anyway, I'd like to, as Pete said, I'd like this to some sort of recommendation to come out of this, and some sort of identification of these cases to say this is what it is, and this is what we're going to do to resolve it. I think this data is great. We've never had it before. But if you're going to present this information, we need to make sure that there's actually going to be progress towards it, which means, something that says, this is what we did in academic year 2021, 2022. This is how we changed it. It's worked for better, or it hasn't, so we're going to try it again. That's my opinion from just an organizational and a governance standpoint. I don't want to go through the details of what you're doing. I would like to know that we've caught it, which is great. We're using iReady, seems proficiently. But now that we are using it, we're identifying our challenges and we're addressing them, and the board is holding you guys accountable to it. If that's all right, I'd like to do another round. Frank?
Two comments now. One, I would say it would be interesting to see, what the benchmarks saying, not like the school benchmarks, so how other schools are doing in comparison to us, whether there's the same phenomenon, or, whether there's like some root cause in the data, or not mathematically, but, anecdotally, if you can get your hands around benchmarking data, how other schools would do in the iReady test comparables. And then the second piece of it is like, what is the ethnic composition of the group who's completing? Is there the achievement gap showing up again here, right? Likely it is.
Sam?
Thanks. I agree, Sarah, that the movement towards action, movement towards how understanding that there's a plan to continue supporting the students and really developing their growth is something that I'd like to see too. And the other question I had really went to Frank's question about benchmarking. So to the extent you guys are able to start collecting any level of benchmarking information, even if it's anecdotal, I think would be really helpful.
Pete, final thoughts?
So I think the iReady scores are nationally normed. So I mean, I think you'll have some automatic benchmark. I know it's not local benchmarks, which can be difficult to establish probably, but at least you'll have the national norms. And the other thing I think that might be useful is I thought you said at the beginning that some of the students are duplicated because they receive more. I think particularly, I don't think we need to see that so much for the green side, but I think for the red side, it would be useful to know, there's 15 kids that are showing up, or, is it half the kids? It's the same core group that's really showing up across all of these that really lead you to make some of these graphs look the way they do.
All right. I think that's it as far as the ED report.
There's the just if I can add one thought on that is, yeah, we wanted to get this information out. This is new information for us as well. And so in a lot of cases, we don't know yet what we don't know, but we're honing in on it. And so I think we can get, the kind of ask that the board has given here when we bring the next installment of this, which would be when we do our third round of testing. So that would probably come to the board in probably April. So we can give you a more clear recommendation, and I think that would be good for planning purposes for next year as well.
All right, thank you. Chris, you want to move on to the panorama survey?
Sure.
So I'm sorry, Chris, we are at 6:50. I know that took a little bit longer, so we're 20 minutes over the ED report. If we can speed up some of it for Frank's big date. Thanks.
We'll work on that. Excuse me. Okay. All right. Okay, so next we wanted to look at panorama survey results. And I wanted to, it was requested at the last meeting to look at those results. So I want to take a moment to, I shared them in the Dropbox with the board. There were two surveys that we did in December. One was a family survey that went to parents, and another was a student survey that we sent to students. Again, just as with the other thing we were doing, this is something new that we're providing, is this panorama survey. It's a service, so we had a few learning curves on it, particularly on the student side. We had to figure out, there were two different versions, one for the 3rd through 5th grade, one for the 6th through 8th grade, and so we've got that sorted out now for the next time. But I do want to share these results, and I hope that the board members had an opportunity to take a look. Increase this, make it a little bigger. Okay. So a couple of things. The nice part about this survey is that it is something that is given nationally. So I know these are the kind of questions that the board has been asking about, and wanted to know, how do we compare that? How is this comparable? And so we do have data, because these survey questions are given exactly to schools across the country. And so we can see what percentile we fall into in terms of a comparative to other schools. And so this first area, this is the family survey, and you can see there were a couple of different areas that we looked at: barriers to engagement for students, grit, learning behaviors, school climate, and school safety. And of these, there were some, when you dig down, it really depends on the questions. These are groups of questions that are brought together in the summary. But if you look at the questions themselves, so for instance, under barriers to engagement, under question 3, it says, the question was, how big of a problem is the following issue for becoming involved with your child's current school, and concerns about getting to the school safely, and whether that was a big problem or not. So then the questions come back, and they're all done in a way where if it's in the green, it's a positive or favorable response. And so all the questions are worded that way, and you can, sometimes it feels like it's a double negative that's on the question, but that's to make sure that everything it flows in that way. An example under let's see, question 6. How big of a problem is the following issue for becoming involved with your child's current school? Do you feel unsure about how to communicate with the school? So this was an area where people felt pretty positive, and you can see in this particular group of questions, extremely positive. The area that was we think we identified as having some things to work on was actually one Pete had mentioned, which was grit. And we specifically chose some that question area, trying to think about stick-to-itiveness for students. Now, this is coming from the family survey, so parents are writing about their own kids. And this is clearly an area where the perceptions are that from parents that the kids are not sticking to their work or staying focused, and that they have a lot of issues. So for instance, question 5 is, if your child fails to reach an important goal, how likely is he or she to try again? Which is a really fair question. This is a parent then viewing how their own child is about sticking to an important goal. And so these kind of results we'll be taking a look at administratively, but also breaking this down. This is important information for our teachers to understand, that the perception of parents are that this is a problem for their kids. And so we need to take a look at that. The other area that was lower and stuck out to us was learning behaviors. So I'm going to pull out an example of question 3. How often does your child struggle to get organized for school? So a parent's perception of, is my kid having trouble with school organization? And that's an important bit of knowledge that a teacher needs. So these results, and we have not done this yet, this is our next step, is to bring this to the teacher level and have time to identify and really look through and dig through the overall results, as well as teachers can look for individual results for their students. They can't see that for family results, but they can see it for their students. Another example under this would be question 5, which is when working on a school activities at home, how easily is your child distracted? So a parent is there at home, can see, are they able to focus on homework, or are they constantly jumping off to something different? So that's an example where we can see parents are saying it's what was it, not all chocolates and something for Valentine's Day, but it's an area that we need to know about as a school, of how best to help kids. Some areas that were pretty strong from a parental point of view in looking at the school is school climate, and examples of that. And I think is really, for me personally, one of the most important questions. To what extent do you think children enjoy going to your child's school? Are kids happy at school? And this is coming from the parents that was a very strong yes, that there's 51% in the highest level and 40% on the second highest level in responding to that question. Another example in this particular group of questions was question 5, which related specifically to our administration, because I know that the board wanted to get a sense of how families feel about our school in lots of different ways. And so here was an example of how well do administrators at your school create a school environment that helps children learn? And 57% put the highest mark on that, and 27% the next highest mark on that. And at the lower end, there were 0, which was slightly well or not well at all. So I was personally pretty happy with the results, seeing that with regard to school climate. And then finally, the area of school safety was again a strong indication. So I'll use question 4. Overall, how unsafe does your child feel at school? Not at all unsafe was by far 82% at the highest level, and 10% below that. So 92% coming in at the highest level in terms of how they feel, kids feel at school. But you can take a look through the results of this. This is again the parent survey, which I think the board was probably most interested in. I'm just going to touch quickly on the student survey in a moment. The other question that I think is important here for the board to look at is our net promoter question, which is the famous, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being best, how likely would you be to recommend GICS to a friend or colleague? and importantly, 10s and 9s. 10s were 61% of the results, and 9s were 14%. So a total of 75% hit the top 2 marks, and those are important because those are your base where you start with on a Net Promoter Score. So at 75, and you take away the detractors, which are anything from 6, where we had 1%, 5, where we had 1%, 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0, where we had 0%. So we only had 2% detractors, which gives us an extraordinarily strong Net Promoter Score of 73. So that's something that is I think an important metric that we want to be thinking about. So that is particularly the parent survey or the family survey, and also in your docket was the student survey that you have there to look at. What's interesting to note, I think, about the student survey, and I'm not going to dig into it quite as deeply, but students, for instance, in the areas of grit and school belonging, have a much higher perception of how they do than their parents do. So the parents had a lot of questions about were their kids sticking with issues, and here you have students saying, oh, yeah, they actually fall into the 80th, 90 to the 99th percentile in terms of grit. So somewhere in the middle there probably is reality, but for us, the fact that parents are pointing that out as something that's concerning, we certainly would take that into account here. But this does, as I said, give you an idea of comparisons, national percentile comparisons for questions. And just know that we as a school, administrators and teachers, can take a look at this data when we're live in the program, and we can dive into questions. We can get showed normal curve distributions of where our kids stack up against all schools, or we can look at just elementary schools, or you can look at just middle schools and see how the bell-shaped curve shifts on that. So there's a lot that we can do. This is all new. It's the first time we've had access to this panorama survey, so we're learning a lot, and we intend to continue forward with it. This is we only do this in grades 3 through 8, and I do want to point out that in the student section, if you see down here, it says 106 responses. That's where we had a little issue, that this shows that this is for grades 3 to 5, but we actually gave the 3rd through 5th grade tests to many middle school students as well. So this is actually 3rd through 8th grade data on the students. And so we'll sort that out the next time and make sure we have that be able to be separated out by elementary and middle school. And we would be able to have that number a little bit higher because some of our students took the middle school question, so we couldn't show both of those. I'll go ahead and leave it at that, but the board asked to see what these results were, so I wanted to share with them what is there.
Thank you, Chris. I would just like to add, and I think this comes from a conversation offline that you and I had, whereas these surveys are benchmarked with other schools as well. So whereas before there were questions that the board or the administration came up with for parents, these are very standard questions using very standard metrics, which I think NPS is great that we're using it. I think we need to add that. I forget the exit interview or the exit survey. But I think NPS should definitely be part of that. I think NPS should be integrated into the entire every metric of the organization and constantly looked upon. Anyway, but thank you. And I do believe part of the reason for the survey, asking about the survey, and I think it was Katrin that had brought it up previously, was to incorporate administration, teacher-student relationships. So I know she will have some thoughts on that, and we can follow that up with her shortly. Frank?
Just measurement stuff, when depends on when you have 106 students in your group, right? The likely ones who are responding up, who are they? Are these the better ones, or are these, they always said, oh, I have enough learning opportunity, right? So how's your sample constructed? Pete can probably write a dissertation about it, right? And then the other question is, I think, are you measuring it? It's interesting to see, with our homeschooling, do we have like some COVID homeschooling, like kind of like noise in the data? Because the parents, like, they worked with their kids extensively during a period of time, and they see, well, these little suckers don't focus on them, right? Their perception of the kids is vastly different. When our parents who are highly engaged and don't have the time to deal with it had to deal with their children, and like myself, it's like, what is he doing, or what was he doing? So I mean, it's a measurement thing, could be, but but it's a national survey, so it shouldn't be. But just observations. But I think there's maybe something to it, to the effect of whether our kids have grit enough, to survive, and to survive in this world. And maybe there's a tweak to it. I don't know, but just comments.
Sam?
Thanks. I had the same question about the sample size, particularly as it relates to the family survey. And then that also goes to the motivation of the families that click through the survey versus those that didn't. But I did like, Chris, what you were saying, that the next step is really to look at it, to try to dig in, take some of this information to the teachers and act on it. So I think it would be interesting to have a follow-up to the board about the action items that you plan to take and how those move forward and where those go. I also saw, both in the family and in the student survey, that while the numbers for some items were extremely positive in the whole, that there were a couple places where we had, particularly like under safety, there were a couple of families that suggested that they felt extremely unsafe, or kids felt that there was a lot of fighting happening. And those were very low numbers, right? They're likely not statistically significant as you're looking at everything, but there are reports of that. And so I wanted to make sure that that's also a concern that's on your radar, that why are there parents who are reporting this? Why are there students that are reporting this? And how does that fit into continuing to make sure that everyone feels safe when they come to school, even if it's a place where everyone, for the most part, looks safe? What are those areas? And do you have a sense of where those concerns might be coming from, and how to further mitigate?
Pete?
Are the parent surveys anonymous, or do you know who the parents are?
The parent surveys are anonymous. The kids just surveys are not.
Okay.
And that's because we'd want to be able to follow up if we found something that was specific to a student.
So
And we tell the kids ahead of time. That's the case.
right. So I mean, I think minimally though, I think so let's take each survey. So I think for the parent survey, I think one of the things that would be useful would be, because what grade the kid's in, is to look at the response rate by grade, because the point was previously made, and it is correct that we have those who respond are likely different from those who didn't respond. One difference being is that they responded, and so if if there's a particular grade where the response rate is particularly low, I mean, I know the ends are different because there's different ends in each grade, that might be worth following up with all the parents in that particular grade to know why they didn't respond or what the needs might be. Then secondly, I think it'd be very useful. I think parents would find some of this information to be pretty interesting to know. They've bothered to fill this out, and here's what our response to that is: that the teachers are now going to talk about, they're going to work on growth mindset and motivation for their kids so that they have more grit and determination and follow through and engagement into some of the stuff that they do. And so that way the parents know that you're just not filling out a survey, but you're going to take that survey. I'm not saying you're not going to do anything with it, but just to report back to the parents so that they understand that this information was very useful and you're going to actually follow up on it. And I think if that gets sent out in a newsletter, not just to the respondees, but to everyone, respondents, but to everyone, then potentially the next go around, more parents will likely participate because they see that this actually has some value. Then for the student side, since you know who the students are, and that's certainly a good thing, I think one of the things you might want to do is to take some of your iReady results that you just presented and cross-tabulate that with some of the responses on some of these questions to see whether or not we're finding that there's a relationship between the students that are performing not as well as we would like, and they might be the same ones that have some issue with stick-to-itiveness or their mindset or whatever it might be, because then that could again foster some sort of response that's not based on drill and kill. And I'm not saying you're doing drill and kill, but that isn't focusing as much on the underlying skills that are required, but potentially focusing more on things that motivate the kids to want to try to do better. And so I think these data can be very, very useful, especially when they're crossed with some of the other data you have. I mean, that's when data become powerful, when you merge different sources and use them in innovative ways. That's it.
Thank you, Pete. All right. If there are no other comments regarding the survey, let's move on to the Finance Committee report. I'd like to make a motion to approve the financials for January 2022. Is there a second?
I second.
It's from Frank. Go ahead, Chris. Frank.
Not sure why that's not showing.
It wouldn't load for me either earlier.
Okay. Do we have Ryan here? If I were to stop sharing, Ryan, would you be able to share that document?
Hey there. Well, I don't see the dashboard document in here. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Do you have that available that I can have you share it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I don't know why it's not loading. I'm not sure what the reason. So
No
I'm going
problem.
to stop sharing and ask Ryan to share.
Can everyone see that all right? Yeah. Okay. Chris, do you want to start or should I?
Well, I'll just introduce by saying that this was an odd month in terms of because of ADA and the Omicron surge with January, and that had an effect on dropping our actual through month 5 down to 93.9 when we'd been above 95 thus far in the year. So that means it really dropped. We expect that to rebound when we do our independent study contracts and get those turned in. So just want to be sure that that's in everybody's mind as we're looking at this financial report. Ryan?
Yeah, and that's good information. And just so that everyone's aware, the school is required to report on the average daily attendance at a given point in time, and then can submit revisions to LAUSD after the fact. And that's what the challenge is this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the surges of students being out. GUTA has to re-report in order to recapture that attendance through the independent study program so that we don't miss out on revenue. However, at this point in time, we have to, we report on the data that's available. So what Chris is saying is, he fully plans on capturing a good amount of that loss. I believe we were down to mid 80% average daily attendance at the end of month 5, which brought our average down to 93.9. Okay. That being said, this is your January presentation, and January is an important month because that signifies our second interim period for LAUSD. So these are the financials that will be going forward in our second interim report to the district.
And just a reminder on that, next month we will approve the second interim report, but it's based on these numbers. So essentially that's just a ratification. We're approving them here with going through the financials.
All right. Moving on to the income statement. We continue to see the same types of variances throughout the year. Our largest variance is in our LCFF. That's the funding that is a component of average daily attendance. So we're 381,000 lower than budgeted. And that's about $48,000 worse than last month's presentation. And that's 100% related to the drop in ADA from month 5. But I believe we're going to get a lot of that back. Offsetting that, there was some good news from LAUSD actually, and they increased their revenue rates for special education. So our school is getting a little bit more money through the SPED program than we originally budgeted for. They increased their rates. All in all, total revenue is down by about 40,000 from last month. On the expense side, there wasn't a lot of movement from last month to this month. We're still experiencing and will continue to experience savings in certificated salaries due to open positions. As a reminder, we originally budgeted for an in-house RSP teacher for special education. The school's actively looking for that position still, or not actively?
No, we went through this at the last meeting. We've outsourced it for the entire year. It's going extremely well. We're going to continue doing the outsourcing that we had, and that is. But when we originally did the budget, it was set up as being a internal position, but that is. That's something we intend to continue through the remainder of the year.
So our biggest savings are in salaries and benefits. We're realizing 117,000 in savings for our health and welfare for this year, which is really helping the budget. Student supplies, we're seeing 78,000 in savings there. The big savings has to do with the student nutrition program, right, Chris? That has been impacted by this pandemic. So we weren't able to serve as many meals or have to pay as much for those meals that we did serve. So we have savings in this category. In operating expenses, we also have savings due to our facility costs. We originally budgeted for a higher rent expense based on more space that we didn't get. So we realized some savings there as well. No real big changes on the expense side from last month to this month. As of January, we are forecasting to end the year with just under 2,000 in net income. And again, I believe that number will improve once the independent study contracts are submitted and we can recapture some of that LCFF revenue that as of now we lost if month 5 doesn't improve. Looking at the balance sheet, we ended the month of January with 2.1 million in the bank, and we have received all of our accounts receivable from last fiscal year. At year end, we're forecasting 1.3 million with a $639,000 receivable at year end. Chris, do you want me to go through anything else before hopping to the check register?
Well, you kind of went through the bullets that are there for both revenue and expenses.
Okay. Take us to the check register. And that concludes the presentation for January. Can open it up to questions, Dr. Jones, unless you have any final comments.
Just that all of this was reviewed by the finance committee, including the check register. And we look through and answer any questions that come up from the finance committee. We also go through and check our credit card backing information to make sure that that all looks good, and it did.
All right. All in favor to approve the financials for January 2022? Frank,
Aye.
Sam,
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
It's a yes for me as well. Moving on to the information of governor's January proposal and budget considerations. Chris, go for it.
Actually,
Can I just one comment regarding like financials. So we're looking, we start looking into capturing the financial data, the raw data, like the big numbers, big ticket items over since inception of school, to see where we are in relationship to enrollment and how, what's the revenue per student, what's the cost, how many classrooms. So we started to develop, a spreadsheet, so which may be helpful then for planning purposes going forward.
I think it's great. Yeah, that's totally, that's awesome. Thank you, Frank.
and Yasir, just there was one other item under finance committee, which was information on the winter consolidated application.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. It's, sorry. Maybe I'm missing something, but it says oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. I thought it was 2D. Yeah. And information on winter consolidated application. Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't require approval by the board, but I just want to explain what this is. We do need to present it to the board. In the winter, it's an informational item. In the summer, we actually we do the approval of our what we call the CONAP, or the consolidated application, which is basically looking at federal money. So our Title I, our Title II, and our Title IV funding that we do. And this document gives an idea of or say exactly what we spend the money on and how much money we spend on Title I. And in particular, Title I is where we do spend, that's how we pay for iReady. And that we wanted to use an ongoing source for that. With Title I, we also pay for our ELD instructional aid, so giving specific support to our English learners, and we use our Title I funds for that. We also take our Title IV funds and move those over into Title I to help pay for that. And the last part that is in this document is Title II, and that's about $7,000 or almost $8,000 that we have, what, $77.55 that we use for supporting professional development, and in particular, it's to support our teachers that are in the induction program that we do through LA County. So If there are any questions about this, happy to answer them. Or Ryan, anything you want to add?
No, nothing at this point. Just that the spring consolidated application is where we will require board approval, and that's where we will be applying for funding for the next fiscal year.
Okay. Then Governor's January proposal and budget.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and pull this up as a PowerPoint. I will try to move quickly through this. This is the infamous document that I mentioned at the Finance Committee. The summary of the budget was 400 pages. And so this PowerPoint that I'm going to show you here, it's about 10 slides that came from a presentation from School Services of California that was about 150 slides. And then XED broke it down and they handed us about 25 slides, and then I broke it down to about 10. So I will go through the information about, this is the governor's January proposal, which is the starting point of the budget year. And so I'm not going to read everything word for word here, but I do want to give you an idea of some things that are important. One is it's a good year in terms of money, 16.1 billion in new revenues for K-14 education. That's great news, but it says there are strings. The first bullet under strings, that doesn't affect us. We do not need to spend down our reserve the way a school district of over 2,500 would have to, or a school or system CMO that is over 2,500 students. Because we are smaller than that, that bullet does not affect us. The one that affects us, of course, is that it's the bottom bullet there that says a sizable share of new funding is proposed for restricted purposes, leaving few resources to address increased costs associated with soaring inflation and rising pension obligations. So those are going to come back to us in a second, but it is really important that we understand and that the reserve cap does not apply to us, so we do not have to worry about that. The educational budget that Governor Newsom put out there, it does a few things. A year ago, we were getting all kinds of new programs, new this, new that, everything else. They actually tried to avoid new initiatives that require the development of yet another plan, and you guys have approved many plans in the last year. So that, I think, is a good thing. So they're trying to augment the things that they've already created. So they're building on critical investments back from 2021 and trying to kind of double down on the funding for them. And then heeding concerns about stubborn decline in student enrollment and attendance and its impact on the fiscal health of school agencies now and into the future. This is the talk of Sacramento right now, and it's about time that they're talking about a number of different things, which is one that we base our whole budget on attendance, but everything that we have to pay for is based on enrollment. Whether the kid is there or not, we're still paying the bills, and we're only one of 6 states in the country that bases their whole budget on attendance. So there's actual talk up in Sacramento and some bills being put forward that might shift that. So that's important. The other thing that's important is being talked about up in Sacramento is the idea of hold harmless because of the pandemic. And as we know, we're being affected. We are being held in harm's way because our enrollment has dropped. And so there are some bills that are being discussed that could help us out. So I just want you guys to be aware those are not finalized yet, and they probably won't become clear until the budget, but they could actually be retroactive to this 21-22 school year. The the budget summary says that the administration intends to engage in outreach and discussions with interested parties throughout the spring to explore options for providing declining enrollment protections for charter schools. So they didn't put it into the actual thing, but they said we're going to talk about it, and it is being talked about. So that's good news. I mentioned that the Newsom administration is proposing fewer new initiatives. That's good. The core programs that receive significant cost of living adjustments, that's good. Proposed changes to local control funding formula and special education are pretty straightforward. So there's not a lot of gimmicks in this budget. That is, again, just a proposal. This won't be. It'll be revised in May and it'll be approved in June, we hope. And then there's some money going into infrastructure. That's not going to affect us directly. There's funding that goes into things that we could possibly fund. We had an ELO plan from last year. We could be looking at expanding some of the themes on that, although there are a lot of strings and rules attached to that. There are transitional kindergarten and the expansion of TK over the coming years is a huge piece that we need to be thinking about. And then they also have some new programs in early college literacy, career pathways. Mostly that's high school level and probably won't affect us quite as much. This graph is just a really quick one that shows that so much of the new funding that is available under K-12 is in the blue. The big blue bar there is categorically funded, meaning it's not just money we can use for anything we think we need to. It's money that is specifically identified for a particular purpose. And you can see the core funding, while it's a good chunk of money, is more widely able to be used for a variety of purposes, but that's not be looking at. It's what this budget would be proposing for our base grant per ADA. So for every student, our base grant under LCFF, it's different by grade levels. So the ones that matter to us are K3 and 4-6 and 7-8. There's also a COLA, cost of living adjustment, of 5.33. So that's in addition to the base grant. And so that's a good, healthy number that we're looking at. There is also what's called GSA, or the grade span adjustments at kindergarten through third grade, and also for high school. There's a little bit of money that comes in for that. So you put all that together, and across the line that says 2022-23 adjusted base grant for per ADA. That is the number that we need to be thinking about for K3 and 4-6 and 7-8. That's the money that's going to come in. We do get a little bit of money for supplemental, which is that where it says 20% supplemental, and that's based on our unduplicated pupil count. But we do not qualify for, nor are we going to qualify for concentration money. That's that 65%. And you can see that's much bigger money in the concentration level. But this is what will drive the income projections. And this will be updated in the May revise that the governor will bring. On the not so good side, CalSTRS and CalPERS is increasing. If you kind of take a look at CalSTRS, which is the most important to us, it shows 16.92% in the current year, and that's going to go up to 19.1% next year. So just over 2% growth, and that's the one that affects us the most. We also do have employees that are under CalPERS, and that is it's actually even worse. from 22.91 to 26.1, so around 3% increase that we're expecting. Unemployment insurance stays the same from next year, those 2 years, and actually looks like it goes down after that in some of the out years. So a lot that we need to take into account. A couple of things that are important. California has said they are planning for a universal meals program in which every student in California can get 2 meals a day free. Currently, they get 1 meal a day free. That's at lunchtime, but they're kind of doubling down with that and talking about breakfast being offered. So we have to think about how we would do that at school, which is most likely we would be doing it probably in conjunction with our running club in the morning, something like that, and have something available similar to how we did supper distributions as kids were leaving in the past. We checked to see if that was an option for this program, and they said no. So it would need to be a breakfast program along with our lunch. But it's something we have to consider with the budget. A couple other pieces, the legal requirements that are part of Universal Transitional Kindergarten, TK. You can see that over the years, that's going to grow and grow and grow. And it grows next year. February 2nd is the birthday date for kids to 4-year-olds turning 5. And so we're drawing our lottery based on those numbers, but you can see that that's going to continue to grow. So that's something we need to be thinking about. And along with that is staffing for kindergarten rooms. There has to be 2 adults. We've typically done that with TK. We've had a instructional aide that's been assigned with a TK class in the past. We would be required to do that. They may be providing funding that we could even have 2 teacher level folks. So that's a possibility as well. We'll have to see how that plays out. Finally, what's not in the proposed budget? A couple of things here: additional pension relief. Pension costs are going up, and they gave us no new money to handle those costs. As I mentioned, a 2% increase in STRS and a 3% increase in PERS. There's also the augmented COLA. The current COLA is at 5.33%. That's in this proposal. But that is the minimum required by law. It could be more. And in fact, the legislative analyst is showing it even higher than that. So we might see something even higher than 5.3. We just will have to see. And then finally, the UPP solutions, because universal meals means people don't necessarily benefit from filling out the forms that are required for federal free and reduced lunch, then they don't fill those out, and we get less of an unduplicated pupil count because of it. That's already happening across the state, and it's something that needs to be recognized. They may come up with some kind of fix or solution, but right now there isn't one because people aren't filling out the federal forms to the level for free and reduced lunch in the way that they used to, because they don't need it actually to get the free lunch. So the very last slide, budget considerations that we need to think about with regard to heading into budget season. We need to think first and foremost that we have a step and column increase that we do every year of 2.8%. That's teachers teaching one more year, and if they advance on their in their academic pursuits and have more classes, a master's or something like that. So step and column is the first bullet. I mentioned it before, I'll keep saying it, STRS and PERS is going up. We also have had enrollment loss. Yeah, we got a couple new students this month. you know, we've dropped down. We need to be figuring how we make that up, and we have to think about that in the budget. Are we going to be able to do an employee pay increase of any sort beyond the 2.8 step and column? We need to factor in over allocation penalties for next year. We need to think about one-time funds that so much of this new money came in with this identified for a particular purpose versus just the COLA 5.33 increase that could be used in any way we choose. We need to think about that expansion of the TK program and the potential of a health benefit increase for staff to bring it in line. We've kind of, the costs have risen to the point where what we offer as the $700 stipend doesn't quite cover a single person now where it used to. So we need to, I think, look at that as part of the budget consideration as well. So I know that was very lengthy and so much to talk about, and I'll open it to questions. I hope I went quick enough without giving short shrift.
Frank,
No questions.
Sam,
Thanks, Chris. Just one question. When we think about budget considerations, will those be things that will be taken to the Finance Committee first to try to come up with some proposals, or are those things that the board would give some guidance on before it hits the Finance Committee?
We would talk about it in Finance Committee and be thinking through all the different pieces. That's something that will be the work of March and April in the Finance Committee, and it really will come to the board level in April and May, and then the decisions will be in, the final budget will be in June.
Great, thanks.
Pete.
No questions from me, thanks.
All right, LCAP, go for it, Chris.
All right, let me escape out of here. Go to here. All right, another long document. This one was what, 13 pages, I think. So this is a document, this is just informational. This is not anything you need to vote on, but we do need to present this and to share it publicly and let the board have it. But this is our local accountability, local control and accountability plan mid-year update, and it references all the many other plans we have done, which you guys have already approved in the past, which is the ELOG plan, educator effectiveness plan, the previous LCAP that we did. So there's lots of different overlapping and interlinking plans that go through this, but the main portion is looking at the three sections. Let me get down to them. The three goals, and each one has some metrics that are a piece of it, but some of these metrics are like CASP, which hasn't happened yet. So I think the most important takeaway for each of the three goals is in white, the line that says description. That basically said what we were going to do when we wrote the LCAP last June. And the mid-year update is in purple. And these are all the things that we have done in each of these areas. So it's basically saying at this point in the year, we've done this, or we've spent this amount. We ordered these things, we set up this program, and all of it is listed in here. We will get to the third section, which is at the when we do the final LCAP, there'll be a final update for this. So as I said, this is not something you need to vote on, but we do need to share it with the board, and we have done so. Goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3 that make up our LCAP. And then at the very bottom of this document is also the summary for parents, which is, excuse me, the board budget overview for parents, which is the last section, which just kind of crunches through the numbers. And I thank Ryan for putting that piece together. Ryan helped us also with making sure, knowing our numbers. We spent multiple meetings working through this document to make sure that it was up to date and accurate. So it's there for the boards to look through. And if you have any questions, happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Chris. Moving on, I'd like to make a motion to approve the audit firm, Eide Bailly.
Wait,
is there-
oh, I'm sorry. I never mind. There wasn't any vote needed. So
is there a second?
I
Second.
second that. Oh yeah, Pete, you go ahead.
All right, Chris, go ahead.
I'm going to ask that we table this until March because we don't have all three of the proposals in, and I would like to have all that information before we decide. We just need to have this done before April 1st, so I don't see any problem with tabling it until next meeting, and we can get all the those reports in.
Sorry, is there a problem with Eide Bailly? I mean, I know we used him for the last couple of years. Is it just?
Not a problem at all. We've been very happy with them, but just out of due diligence, we want to be sure that the prices are competitive. And so we put out three different folks, including Eide Bailly. So Eide Bailly and two others. And we will see how their proposals compare. We'll look at it at the finance committee, and we can recommend at next month.
All right, thank you. Then I rescind my motion. I'd like to make a motion to table this. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's from Pete. All in favor, Frank,
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
That's a yes for me as, I'm sorry, Pete and
Yes.
Frank. Yep, there we go. That's a yes for me as well. Calendar and topics for upcoming board meetings. I know Katrin is not here today, but I would really like to schedule that that off-site meeting / retreat in person. And if we can figure out some dates that work for all of us, topics include strategic planning, topics include succession planning, topics include board addition of board members and Board of Regents conversations. So I'd like to open it up. I would prefer to do it on a Saturday, as we have done in the past. It's middle of February, so a Saturday in March. Chris, you are unavailable the second week of March, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna throw it out there for, let me see, Saturday, March 5th, 19th, or 26th. Frank?
There might be a Utah skiing trip in there.
Oh man, life is so tough.
I know, but like this may not happen because if it doesn't snow, I'm not gonna go because I wanted to test some performance skis, and I'm not gonna do this without good snow. So I might not go, but I can't tell you when it was. I know that Emma comes back the 12th from New York, and I think the 20th or the 19th, 20th, it could be that weekend where they had spring break.
Yeah, I think that's the Goethe Spring. Is that right, Chris?
No, it's not the Goethe Spring Break. It's I think
No.
it's not, doesn't align with the Goethe Spring Break, the independent schools.
Oh yeah,
Ours is in April.
April,
Yeah.
that's right.
And I think it's that. So I don't know exactly. So I can't commit for the later part. The January 5th is okay.
January 5th is all right. Okay.
Oh, March 5th. I'm sorry, March
March
5th. Yeah.
Sam?
I cannot do March 5th. It overlaps with the board workshop already scheduled for my work, but I could do the dates later in the month.
The 12th or the 26th?
Not the 12th.
Not the 12th, the
Sorry,
19th
19th
or
or
the
the 26th.
26th.
All right, yep.
Yeah.
Pete,
I could only do the 19th.
okay. So Frank, is that a hard no on a 19th?
I don't know. Let me check. Shit. Sorry, fault language.
All right, you check. I will, we can come back to this. And Chris,
Yep.
you can send out some notifications.
Okay.
Sound good? All right. Any other upcoming topics or conversations to have in future board meetings, Frank?
No, it took me a while to get off this.
That's all right, Sam.
No,
No.
so but the Utah trip would be the 20th through the 24th.
Oh.
Okay, so I might be able to do the 19th.
Okay, cool. Sam,
No other topics.
Nothing for me.
all right. At this time, the board will be convening to close session.